I am in room 6 down at the lower level of St. Timothy's, arguably my second favorite space at St. Timothy's. Of course, the worship space is my favorite space, but in this space every Tuesday, except for example next Tuesday when we won't be having a Bible study, we do Bible study. And what we do, it's just so basic to this journey. We put at the center of our life these words that invite us to remember that God is the decisive reference point of life. And the job of the disciple is to be constantly listening to God's voice. Our job is not to listen primarily to Biden's voice or Trump's voice or some political pundit's voice. It is to listen to God's voice. When I was ordained, I had to say this: I solemnly declare that I do believe the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments to be the Word of God and to contain all things necessary to salvation. Salvation being well-being here and now in every respect. That the Word of God is what will take you there to abundant life. The problem, of course, is we listen to all sorts of other voices, and they often lead us very much astray. The church has often paid more attention to other voices. For example, in the 30s in Nazi Germany, many German Christians, the majority of the German church, was listening not just to the Word of God, but to the word of Hitler. And what happened in 1934 was that some Christians, led by Karl Barth and others, they put together something called the Barmen Declaration. And it's not rocket science. It was a declaration that was reminding the church, guess what? The voice we most need to listen to is God's. It begins by saying, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, not the Führer, not the Reich administration. It goes on to say that this is the voice we need to listen to. And it ends by saying, we reject the false doctrine that with human vainglory the church could place the word and work of the Lord in the service of self-chosen desires, purposes, and plans. Namely, nothing of our own devising should get in the way of listening to that voice. You know, too often in church life when we're discussing important social issues of the day, we go immediately to the voice of the politician or the pundit, rather than begin with the voice of God. Now, it's not that the Bible, it's not that this book has in it papers on every issue of the day, but what we do is we go to the fundamental grounding of our life and see how that informs how we live our life here and now. What will bring well-being? So in our national debate right now, there's a big debate about the Build Back Better plan, a dramatic change in the social contract in this country. Rather than listening to each side first, we should be looking at these texts that we believe contain all things necessary for well-being and healing and see what they say. You know, it's not that by doing that we will just suddenly discover the truth about every matter. But what it will do is, if the members of a church begin there, they will then have a common grounding point that will hold them together in this search for the truth. If we begin at each side of the partisan divide, God help us, because eventually what happens in churches is that creates more and more division. If we begin with the Word of God, we may discover, wow, we don't see eye to eye on this, but what we know is where we need to begin. It's true for the social issues of the day. It's true for our common life in all sorts of other ways. So I'm not saying y'all have to come to room 6 to do this on Tuesdays, but get that Bible out of your closet, out of the bookshelf. get the dust off it, open that baby up, and see what God has to say, and just stay with it. It's a big book. It will not be conquered in a day. But what we believe is that it contains all things necessary for healing and well-being and life. What's not to love about that?